Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the podcast. Hi, Lisa.
Hey there.
How you doing?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good. We always tell our listeners that Lisa and I do not live in the same state. So when you're listening to these episodes, we actually record like 13 at a time.
Yeah.
So I think we're on 10, 11.
Yeah, 11.
Then I always apologize to our guests as we get down the line. Like, things get a little loopy around here. So I'll pre-apologize to our next guest. But I'm excited about this conversation. I was just on this person's podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Really great conversation. I think we both will really resonate with the topic today. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's welcome Terri Cole to the podcast. Hi, Terri.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, welcome. Before we get started with our big question, why don't you let our listeners know about the work that you do?
I am a licensed psychotherapist for the past 27 years, and my areas of expertise are boundaries and codependency are my two big areas. I'm the author of a book called Boundary Boss and a book coming out in October called Too Much, all about high-functioning codependency.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, clearly we're going to get into that. I'm sure it has to do with your belief. But yeah, let's get started. We'll put those books in the show notes as well, so our listeners can take a look at those. But the big question around here is, what is a belief that you once had that you no longer have that has impacted your life in a meaningful way?
I once believed for a long time, keep in mind, this wasn't like I was 10 when I believed this. I believed this for decades, that I was responsible for the feeling states and the decisions and the circumstances of the people in my life that I loved, even though it was to the detriment of my own internal peace.
That's heavy.
Yeah, can you speak more on that? So like maybe even talk about where that belief even came from and how, not only where that belief came from, but how did that belief show up in your adult life and how it robbed you of your peace?
Well, part of it is when you think about the way that women are raised as girls, right? Like what is the conditioning? What is the thought process? I think it probably still is the same, but certainly when I was growing up, it was very much about being nice and about, if you were, be a good girl for sure. And if you don't have anything nice to say, zip it. So I think we all got this messaging about what was expected of us and what we wanted. And I always, I was kind of the hero child in my family system. And so I always felt overly responsible. And then, I grew up, had a whole career in entertainment, and then became a psychotherapist 2.5 decades ago, and saw that it wasn't just me. So how it actually impacted my life was that if my partner was unhappy, I couldn't be happy, right? Like it's like you have your good mood, your partner comes in, they're in a bad mood, they've had a rough day, and suddenly you're dancing as fast as you can to be like, what can I do to change your mood? What I'm really describing is high-functioning codependency, which is what the new book is about, because it was such an important aspect of my growth. And learning that not only am I not responsible for the feelings, states, decisions, and outcomes of the people in my life, it is impossible for me to be responsible for those things. And attempting to be is really an overt or a covert bid to control someone else's outcomes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So I'm raising two daughters. One is 13, one's 11. My son is 9. As soon as you started speaking, I was like, be a good girl. Be nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, which I get for the purpose of discouraging bullying and mean talk. But geez Louise, I think there's so many other ways that are popping into my head that we sometimes unconsciously condition our girls, our daughters, young women to be codependent. And I never considered that before. Can you speak to some of the other ways that we do this without even recognizing it? Because I would love the information personally.
Yeah. I mean, think about emotional labor, right? Think about who keeps the ship of your lives running? Like, does the toilet paper replace itself? Does the food find its way into your refrigerator? Does it get made? Even if you have help, or even if you've delegated some of that, when you think about the amount of emotional labor, which is considered, what is it actually? It is the unpaid, undervalued efforts that we as women in particular must assert to keep the boat of our lives, of our family lives, if we have families, afloat. And a lot of times, even when people are partnered, the majority of the emotional labor falls on women. And I think that
100%.
is something that what I see in my therapy practice is that people coming in and burnt out.
Yep.
It's almost like when you're a high functioning codependent, there's like this, for a long time, we give way too many F's, so to speak. Like all the F's in the world for all the things and all the people. And then it's like you hit a wall, and it's almost like no more F's. Like, but that's when you know you need to change something, because that's not healthy, right? To go from I care way too much and I'm overly involved in all the things to like, I don't even care. I literally don't care. And this is what I see as a pattern. And then I can help clients and people who take my courses and whatever move to the middle, right? Where when you have appropriate boundaries, when you prioritize your own preferences in a real way, when you tell the truth, even if it isn't nice per se, right? We to be authentic human beings that actually have real relationships with people, we can't continually say yes when we want to say no, because any relationship built on your self-abandonment is not going to last, or it's going to last fully at your expense. It's not satisfying, right? It's very, and then we think, who are all of these entitled mother effers in my life? Like, who are these people? Like, what the hell is wrong with them? But what we don't realize is that we are serving ourselves up on a platter. We've invited people to take and to have these expectations and to be entitled to our grade A service. Like, we are amazing at taking care of all the people and all the things. And we've taught them how to treat us. And what I'm doing in this new book is I'm teaching you how to teach people something new. We are unlearning these self-sabotaging behaviors. And they're really, it's not just self-sabotaging. They really are self-abandoning, which is very specific and particular. Because if we are doing things that are truly not in our own highest and best, to keep the peace, right? To keep things rolling. Don't want to make a big deal. Like, think about how much of the time we minimize how we feel or what we want, because we don't want to like be dramatic. Right. We don't want people to be like, she's hysterical, she must be on her period. Like all the myths that come along with women asserting themselves. And so we have to reject that. We have to realize that to have authentic relationships and to teach our daughters to assert themselves and that they have a right to take up space. This is not like waiting for an invitation to the table. Teaching our daughters that this is how you build your own table, as Beyonce would say, or this is how you pull your own damn chair up to the table.
That part.
And I feel like all of this cult of niceness, it teaches us to not do those things. And it teaches us that if we're assertive, we're aggressive as women, which is just simply not true.
Well, I think this is the tricky part. So I do think we're taught that in part because I know when I say, okay, I'm done with everything, it is reflected back to me that I'm aggressive or that, so this is where I'd love some like practical, because like most of myself and a lot of my friends are in the thick of this right now with small children. My older child has additional needs. She has special needs. So it's like compounded, right? And I do have a very involved partner. He is very involved. So then there's this weird, like in the sense of he is like, we're sharing the morning responsibilities. We're sharing the evening responsibilities. He's, especially compared to maybe the traditional man, he's very involved. but I still own all the like 100 tabs. Actually, I have a tab list in my notes in my phone that I've been making. It's actually, I think, up to 50 something.
Literally.
Yeah. And so, and that's just the categories. There's actually subcategories per mental tab. But anyway, my point is that like, how do we, what is my next step? Here I am. It's reflected back to me that, you know, I do a lot. Look, I show up. I'm a really involved parent. I'm like, that is true. I can't argue with that. And I'm still owning the 50 tabs. So like, how do I adjust my part in that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Adjusting your part is the answer. I think that what you're talking about is being the default parent.
Yeah.
So if the other partner has the luxury of going to the gym, or if they go to work every day, or if they, like, there's one person who's holding this shit down. There's one person who you know where the kids are at all times. You have all the phone numbers in your phone. You're the one who's getting the end of the year teacher gift, and you're calling the friend to make sure that they know that they have this allergy or whatever the thing is. That's your tabs. And I think that part of, there was a woman who wrote an article in Marie Claire a bunch of years ago about, this is when I first got turned on to emotional labor and all the invisible work that goes on. And she basically was talking about the fact that she and her husband were both engineers, and her husband was working from home one day. And he texts her, she's at work, she's physically in the office. And he's like, can you let the dog walker know she doesn't need to come today because I'm home? And she's like, why the fuck do you not have the dog walkers? Like, why? Why am I producing this even when I'm not even home? But she also realized she sort of set herself up as always being the point person on all the things, partly because she was a little bit controlling and felt like he's probably not going to do it the right way. That was one truth that she shared. But partly because it was just what she learned. So what she did is she took all the tabs that you're talking about, and she wrote them on a whiteboard, every single one. And then when he came home, she was like, hey, here's what you do. There was 7 things. Here's what I do. There was like 45 things, 50 things.
Do that.
And she was just like, I want you to look at this and let's decide, because I need it to be more equitable than it is. And I want you to have 25 things and me to have 25 things, or whatever it was. Okay. And at first he was a little bit defensive. And then she goes on to say, like, but then here it is in black and white. Like, here's the data that she presents.
The logic.
Yep. And she's like, how is this fair? Like, it's not. And yet, not doing it blaming, saying, this is how we set it up. You're 50% of every silent and spoken agreement that you have in your relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because that's all we can be. But when you think about it, the way to approach is to say, hey, this is what I need to get out of my brain. Right? These are all the things. And I am the default parent. And listen, sometimes we do make agreements and we negotiate. Maybe in a situation, I don't know, your situation, other people's situation, different clients, they're the default parent and they've agreed that they're staying home till the kids are through whatever grade. And so their partner is making most of the money for that period of time. And so are they going to have it 50-50 split when that person is working 50 hours a week? Probably not. Right? They'll probably that wouldn't be equitable either. So people have agreements about what it is that they're doing. But when it feels like you have 55 tabs open at all times, this is just a recipe for burnout. And here's another thing that I think is very important, that when we're talking about sharing things, we're not talking about it ultimately being your responsibility to check off, right? It means that person takes that task from beginning, middle, and end. Don't be reporting to me. I'm not your manager. Get the shit done without a parade, without a fanfare. There will be no gold medals. You will just do it the way that I do 800,000 things a day.
The gold medals is a hard one for me. The gold medals is a hard one because I do want to I don't know. I think I'm getting to the nitty gritty of it because my friends and I have talked a lot about boundaries and limits and the invisible, like we know all the things, But I'm like, okay, then what do we do?
Implementing it. That's
like,
the hard part.
I'm even grumpy that I have to be the one who's organizing the meeting and putting the responsibility, but I'm just going to let it go. But like, I have been keeping a list in my phone of like, oh, that was a thing I do. Oh, that was a thing I do. Oh, that was a thing. And ironically, I do have a 7-hour meeting booked tomorrow with my partner to come together and to define each tab and the subcategories of the tab and an agreed upon definition of success. Not my definition. That's what I'm going to have to let go of. But an agreed upon definition of success, and then who's the owner of it. So that you think that that's a good first step.
Hello, this was synchrotastic. Obviously, we were meant to talk today.
Yes.
Right.
Because you're having that meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
Clearly,
I love it.
your angels are looking out for you.
Yes.
I think probably the most important aspect of that meeting is you giving up your codependent attachment to control the outcomes, and your partner being willing to take full responsibility for what is going to be their responsibility, and then saying, okay, what are the time frames? Because these are the things that I find that in partnerships that people fight about, right? Where someone says they're going to do it, but then they don't do it. Or they don't do it for days. And they're like, but I was going to do it. You're like, but you didn't do it for 4 days and I couldn't stand it not being done. So I did it. So I do think that having time frames around, like if these things are being done on a weekly basis, you can do them anytime that week, but it's got to be done, sort of. Because it's really hard to not check back and be like, oh, so did you contact the teacher about the class trip? No, that's on my list. I'm going to. There's a certain passive aggressiveness that can feel that way, and also asking about, like, there can't be any asking about the other person's stuff. It really has to be. And then you have to let the chips fall where they may when they're not your chips. So if that means that your partner doesn't do it, and that means your kid can't go on that thing, that's between your partner and your kid to work out why they didn't.
My God.
But that's like the hardest
the
part
hardest
because
part.
I can know that my child will like suffer from that. And so one of the things that I have done is I have gone through the list and I have decided what are non-negotiables for me that I will not be able to let go of.
Yep.
And I'm going to say that I would like to own these because otherwise I'm not really, I know, like I have to be real with like what I'm not going to be able to let go of. And there are some things that my older child needs that I will absolutely not be able to let go of because if I do, she suffers in a very significant way that would be considered neglectful to me. Yep. So I am making that decision, but I know you're going to say that. Lisa, go ahead.
No, it's so hard. And for perspective, they're about to have a great meeting and figure this out.
Maybe Terri needs to be there.
I know you need a mediator. But my situation is, in full transparency, I'm going through a divorce now because this was just one aspect of it, but this was a huge aspect of our marriage. Me being a worker, like working our entire marriage, never opting to stay home with the kids, but starting a business so that I could work my schedule around getting them to and from school. But I made a list. My list said, here's a list of all the shit I do since you're confused about how I contribute to this family. Okay, that's what my list said.
Here's some clarity, buddy.
Because I was angry, but I wrote a list, and just like your example, he had 7 things that he was primarily responsible for that I almost never had to touch. And then I had a list of 52 things that he never touched, or maybe touched one time, like, oh, I'll help with this. And so I wrote it out so he could see. And the response was dismissiveness. Like, like whatever. It's not that hard. He made it sound like the things on the list aren't rocket science. He said that to me. This isn't rocket science, Lisa. And I said,
okay. So then take half of these non-rocket science, super easy, boring, stupid things, and now they're your responsibility. Great.
And do them. Exactly. Yeah. So we never got there.
Happen.
Clearly. Yeah. So like I said, we are in the process of a divorce, and I feel like it's the best thing for me. But what I related to most of what you said is when you were talking about creating, the this black and white, very plain, this is what I do, this is what you do, and then not being the owner of the lists and the manager. Like, how do you stop that? Like, how do you, like, because when we would try to do some things, you know, it would be like, see what I did? See, that's
I
done.
know, that's what I want to talk about. Is like the like.
It's angering. Like, it's.
Yeah. It's the negotiation of it. It's the I need the praise because now I'm doing it, and look, I don't see other dads doing this. It's the I'm upset that I'm it's like all of their stuff that comes. How do we deal with all of the stuff on their side that come? Because like ultimately these renegotiations are going to deeply benefit me and you, but definitely not them. So how do they have the value? How do they not get defensive? How do they not require all this praise?
Well, part of it is, first of all, it's not true that it doesn't benefit them. It will benefit them because they will be way more invested in your family system and your children and the workings and collaboration and showing your kids what it looks like to actually be partnered, not to be managing the crap out of someone. And managing someone is not love. It's just control. I mean, that was the model that I saw in my home.
Can we have that be the title of this episode?
Yes.
Managing someone is not love. It's control.
Ooh.
Ouch. Okay.
All right. Fact. So we're gonna assume it does benefit them. And part of what you're also talking about is that you need more mutual appreciation. So what I say is that the same way, because what I'm really hearing, which you're not saying, but I know it's there because it's called being a human, we all want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
We all want it. And so in my own marriage, I set it up very early on, both of us, that we would just be grateful for every friggin' thing. Every little thing. Whoever makes the bed, the other person later is like, thanks for making the bed. Even though every day somebody makes the bed. And that may sound like ridiculous, but it's not. Because when you're really polite and appreciative with your person, when you listen to them, when they're bidding for your attention, when you actually put your thing down and look at them, or if they do that for you, right? If you look at what the Love Lab, right, did. So this is 45 years of just really analyzing people in relationships and what are the things, who are the masters of love, who make it. And they did this study, and the masters of love, as opposed to the disasters, are the people that 7 out of every 10 times that one of the person in the partnership bid for the other's attention, they gave it to them in some positive way. So why do we bid for attention? Not because we want to talk about the stupid weather or whatever the thing is that we're bidding with, right? It could be like, oh, I watched Colbert last night and blah, blah, blah. Like, it could be about anything. What we're really saying is, hi, are you still there? I am. Okay. Like there's in a way, there's a sweetness to it. It's literally saying, hello. And the person saying back, I see you. And that's it. So the disasters, 7 out of 10 times, when one or the other bid for the attention, they either got dismissed, ignored, or a negative response. Like one person was like, oh, she was reading her book and he was looking and he was like, oh, look, there's cardinals over there. So if a positive response would be like, oh, great. An aggressively positive response would be you putting your book down and being like, where? Let me see. Right? Yeah. I'm coming away from what I'm doing and I'm willing to do that. But the disasters would go either say nothing, totally ignore, or say, how many times do I have to tell you I don't give a crap about birds? I don't care. I'm reading. Do you not see I'm reading? Now, can you see how someone bidding for attention and getting that response probably not going to be good for the relationship?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I feel like, again, back to who needs a parade. I think we all need a friggin' parade.
Yeah.
And I think that making these invisible tasks and energy and the stuff that you're doing more visible and wanting to be appreciated for it is normal. So part of it is making an agreement, like, let's both try to acknowledge the other, even though these are things that, and if maybe your partner needs to be acknowledged for what a good provider they are, then acknowledge them for that if they are. Like, do you know what I mean? Whoever cooks, it was amazing. Whoever, then the person cleans up. Even though my husband cooks, I clean up. He'll always say, thanks for doing the dishes. Thanks for cleaning the kitchen. Like, I'm going to do it anyway, whether he says it. But what I'm always thinking about, and I've been with my husband 27 years, is that he does not work for me and I do not work for him. So every bit of kindness that we generously give each other, what we're doing is we're making deposits in this well of goodwill, the well of goodwill. So when the shit hits the fan, and it's going to in life, whether it's with dramatic and traumatic things, whether it's physical stuff, somebody gets sick, when you have a lot of stuff accumulated in the well of goodwill, it makes the relationship so much more durable to manage the hard times or the rough times, or even going through an infidelity or something like that, right? But if that well of goodwill is, robust, you have a better chance of coming back from adversity or weathering the storms of adversity in a less painful way, more like a team and less like separate beings,
Yeah, and I think you brought to light two really important things. And I do try to zoom out a lot and go, we're in a season of building a company and raising small children, one who has extra needs. So remember, we like each other. And I do think that that plays a big role. We did have a therapist also who had us do this thing where we send 3 gratitudes, text each other at the end of the day, no matter what. So that is helpful too, because it just forces you to pause. I think you said 2 important things. It's you make the invisible visible.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when he says, oh, I need appreciation that I did this thing, I'm like, that's what we're supposed to be doing all together. And he goes, well, I appreciated you. And I'm like, I appreciate the things you do. And I'm like, and I just got it in that moment. I'm like, yeah, you do the things you see. And so it was like, I see all that you do. And now you want me to praise it, which feels like more work to me. But then your rebuttal is you praise the work I do, but you don't see the work I do, so there's no possible way you could. So when you said make the invisible visible, that clicked for me. Okay, we can do that. Let's make it all visible.
Yeah.
And then let's agree that we're all going to be offering gratitude for all the visible things that we now share.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that making the invisible visible was the key.
Yeah.
Yes, and what you'll find is that there's so much less resentment.
Yep.
Yes.
That's
because
what
this is
And resentment is a really terrible feeling.
Yep.
I don't want to be resentful. And my partner is a very willing person. It's like me having to work through my shit to be like, I just need to get over the fact that I'm making it visible. I assigned those roles to me. So, because I get grumpy and I'm like, why do I have to make it visible? It's like, well, he doesn't even know it exists. So I don't know how else it's going to happen.
You can sit around and wait, but
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But these are really great tools, right? For people who are listening to this, making it visible. And also I want to encourage people, you can't, for me, I haven't been able to make it visible. I've been making the list. So I set up the 7-hour planning day for our family about a month ago. I said, this is my intention. I'd like to make the work visible. I'd like to assign collaborative value to not me just assigning things, but this is I want it to be collaborative, not I'm the one telling you what to do. And then I've been making a list ever since, because the thing about the invisible work is it takes time, because this thing might only pop up once a month and this thing. So take the time with it, make the list, let it accumulate over time. Don't try to do it in a day. It'll be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you do, because the thing is, you won't even be able to remember in a day all of the invisible work that you do. It'll come up, you're like, oh yeah, I do that once a month or twice a month or whatever the thing is. So I think that's a really good advice, to take your time. And also knowing that we really have set it up this way for so many reasons. So don't feel bad. I don't mean you personally, I just mean in general, right?
Yeah.
This is a patriarchal system that we've been indoctrinated into, every single one of us. And even though it's getting better, and hopefully getting better and better, is what we're hoping, with women being in more positions of power, there's still a reality that we have these old tapes playing. And when you really think about it, this is crazy. I heard this statistic the other day. Everyone knows, women couldn't get a credit card without a male cosigner until 1974. But did you know that you couldn't get a business loan without a male cosigner until 1986?
I was already here. What? Oh,
right?
My gosh.
So we've come a long way, baby, so to speak. We really have. And yet, and wanting to have a more equitable, because this is really what we're talking about. And when you're coming from being codependent to being interdependent, right? This is what we're looking for in relationships. So codependent is when you're overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the situations, the circumstances, the decisions of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace, maybe your psychological and financial well-being as well, depending on what the situation is. And at its core, what is codependency? Disordered boundaries and an overt or covert bid to control other people's outcomes. That's basically what it is. So for me, that's all well and good, but the high functioning piece is the piece that I added. So I coined this phrase because like you guys, my very highly capable clients did not see themselves in the traditional definition of codependency. They were like, I'm not involved with an addict. What?
Right.
I'm not dependent on crap, lady. Everyone's dependent on me. I'm making all the money. What are you talking about? I'm the boss.
Oh my God.
I'm the boss of all the things. And I was like, oh, my clients don't know what codependency is.
No.
When I renamed it and expanded the definition for this book and for my teachings, what I saw was that it was my flavor of codependency, which is that the more capable you are, the less codependency looks like codependency. But it's still codependency. But nobody checks on you. They're all like, Lisa's fine. What? She's always fine. She's fine. Right? You're both always fine. Everyone's fine. You're good. Nobody checks on you. Trust me. You don't want checking on other people. I know it. Because people come to women like us who they're like, you have it together. You're like, I'm friggin' exhausted. I might have it together, but at the expense of a lot of things. So we want to undo that. We want to go away from codependency, which means we learn what is our side of the street and what is someone else's side of the street. The days of cleaning the whole neighborhood and taking responsibility for that have got to be in the past. You are not responsible for all the people and all the things, right? And there's a glass ceiling of our own making with high functioning codependency, because there's only so far you're going to go if you are feeling overly responsible for the decisions of other people, because we can't control other people. Like, it's such a losing proposition to be like, but I just want to help them. I mean, how much of the time are we auto advice giving? Someone has a problem. How much of the time are you immediately like, I have an idea. I know what you should do. I know some people. I'll make a phone call. Here, I have a book. I underlined it for you. Like, really think about it. I mean, all the time? Every time? Or is that not true? Do you let people have their problems?
Okay, so I have to get the book because clearly I never, like when we were even talking about the topic codependent, I'm like, that'll be cool. I never identified with this term, but the way you just explained it, my whole life.
I know.
My
That's
entire
why I wrote a book.
life. I'm like, and I can't even believe it because it doesn't even, we had a guest yesterday and we talked about another high functioning concern. We're talking about coping skills. And then that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, because sometimes you just have blinders on trying to create a life that you think is going to bring you happiness and keep you safe and give you all the things that maybe you never thought you could have or thought you deserved. And you look back and maybe you've achieved some of the things, but something is still missing and something is still not right. And for me, a lot of that related to my marriage and getting married at like 25 and just, I mean, everything you describe, I miss codependent. I'm like, all right, let's finish your bachelor's degree. Let's help you get signed up for your classes. Let me proofread your papers. When you talk about my side of the street, I had zero boundaries with that. I didn't have a side of the street.
Sure.
Like the whole neighborhood. It's like, all right, let's apply for a graduate school now. You ready? Let me get your application. Here's where the school. I was like, but I was a parentified child, the oldest of 6.
You were.
Always taking care of kids. And it's like, oh my God.
In the name of helping.
In the name
right?
of helping.
Because And like when people benefit,
Yeah.
like well, they think they benefit. It's all a lie.
And
Like,
you're
they
praised
think they
for it.
benefit, and
You're
then
praised
you praise,
for
and then
it.
it just reiterates the cycle over and over and over again. It's labeled as good. You're helpful. You're involved. You're a good wife. Like, but nobody
think about
benefits.
that kid, right? At least think about the kid, the parentified child in you. And that girl is tired
As hell.
as hell and really wants to be like, hi, can it be my effing turn ever? Like, how about, is it my turn now? And the answer is, you can make that answer be yes.
Yeah.
All of us can, by realizing that the hyper independence, right? Because even though we're codependent, the way it shows up for HFCs, as we call ourselves, high functioning codependents, is that we are hyper independent.
Yeah.
So I will help you with all your stuff, but when you're gonna come and help me, I'm gonna be fine. I don't need it. I'm good. Don't worry about it. I got it. I couldn't even let like the taxi driver lift my bet. You know what I mean? He'd be getting out. I'm like, I got it. Don't worry about it. Like, why?
Oh, I totally do that. Like, I don't want you
You
to
know
hurt
what I
your
mean?
back. I'll do it.
I'll hurt my back. Don't hurt yours.
Yeah. But
But you said something that's like hitting me super hard. Okay.
okay.
So I had this belief that, so I have this fear of like any type of addiction. My children suffering from addiction.
Okay.
And the belief comes from, if they suffer from addiction, then I will never get a break from parenting because I'll have to be helping them for the rest of their life. And I just want to break so bad that if I can just get to the end of my parenting journey, I'll finally be able to get the rest and peace and care that I want. And what I hear
Wow.
you saying is, first of all, that's a different work that I need to do. But second of all, I don't have to wait for my kids to grow up in order to get the care. And that is huge.
Ole.
Like, I literally have been like waiting. When people are like empty nesters, I'm like, that is not going to be me. Like, I'm going to be like on the beach, and it's like I'm going to be like finally getting my time. And I have this like anxious feeling inside, like if something happens and my kids don't turn out right, I'm never going to
Yep.
get the time. Because when my first daughter was born, my husband was like, yay. And I was like, oh shit, I've been here before. What? Like, I don't know if that was how it was for you when you had your first kid. Like, it was so familiar.
Yeah.
It was like, I know how to take care of kids because I was parentified too. So I was like, I knew how to take care of kids. It was like,
Sure.
oh,
I
I'm just
thought I
signed
did.
up for my second lifelong shift.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we can have
think-
that now.
Exactly. And I think you're making a really important point about self-care and about all of this. I'll be happy when, I'll be relaxed when, because what you're not doing is you're not modeling healthy behavior for your children. And I think that you have to carve out time for what you need so that you are a replenished partner and mom. And that means negotiating for your time, being willing to get help if that's what you need.
Yeah.
Have some non-negotiables throughout your day or your week that are things that truly fill up your bucket, whether it's working out, whether it's just resting, whether it's meditating. I mean, everyone has something different that sort of fills them up. And it can also be non-productive things, like I just love to read People magazine every week. Like, that's like 2 solid hours of like people who are not my clients that I don't have to worry about. It's lovely. Like, just relaxation for the brain. And I think each of us has to figure out for ourselves
What that is.
what is that. But you're right, because here's the thing about being codependently attached to children and adult children, because of course I see this in my therapy practice, and people email me all the time from the interwebs about how to deal with what's happening with their adult children. They can't let it go. They can't stop paying their rent. They can't stop. And I'm like, part of our job, if you look at, do you know that there's a poem in the book, The Prophet, and it's about children and about child rearing. And it's basically saying like, our kids are lent to us for a period of time. We are the bow, they are the arrows. Like, it is our job to like let them go far and be like, yay, you. My mother had this saying on her refrigerator. It was an Irma Bombeck saying, which is so funny because the young people are like, who the hell's Irma Bombeck? Anyway, and it said, I promise not to take credit for your accomplishments if you promise not to blame me for your failures. I was like, I think that's a good deal.
That is deep. That is deep.
And it's fair, right? Because as your kids grow up, your job as a parent right now is to teach them critical thinking, is to let them have experiences, let them experience the consequences of bad decisions if they make a bad decision, right? All of the overfunctioning for kids, what you end up doing is infantilizing them. And they're like, I don't get how the world works, right? Because if we overparent, and I'm not saying you guys are doing this because I have no idea, but if we overparent, okay.
I'm trying not to.
There's a
it's like,
helicopter going around real big above me. There's some propellers. Yeah. They're loud.
What we're doing unintentionally, let's just say, is that we end up centering their experience on ourselves. So if they go, oh, I had a fight in school today and it was so painful, and you go, well, did you tell the teacher or did you blah, blah, blah? Before you say anything, before you have any fixes, just go, what'd you do? How'd that feel? What do you think you should do? Your gut instinct is good. Just asking open-ended questions can be the difference. And I'm not saying leave kids, hanging in the breeze, but we want to teach them critical thinking. What do they think they should do? You should be interested in that as parents. We want to know.
Yeah.
And let them talk, even if what they want to do is dumb. I want revenge. I'm going to go beat her up tomorrow. You can be like, okay, well, let's think this through. So I'm not saying we just leave them to their own devices, but knowing what's happening in their minds and then helping them go, okay, then what would that accomplish? And then where do we go from there? And then what does that mean? You end up not coming from your fear place, but really coming from a place of letting them explore,
Yeah, and I think that, I have gotten a little better at that and made some progress. I think I also have to acknowledge when I think about where does that come from for me, it's all of this, but it's also when you do have a child who has a lot of extra needs and you watch them suffer and struggle a lot more than the average child.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't have something else.
Right.
Like you can't have to go through something else. You're already struggling with reading and with math and with this and with that. And it's like, and your health and you're like, dude, I got to get this poor kid. So it's sort of just like surrendering to that a little bit and saying like whatever path they're on, they'll be able to handle. And even though they have gone through a lot, it doesn't necessarily mean they can't handle more. Yeah. Because that's where I get a little bit like more anxious and helicoptery, especially over my older daughter, is like she's already had to deal with so much. I don't want her to have to deal with more, but that's not going to serve her because she can't live with me forever. But
correct.
Kind of back to what you're saying just around all of this is like, I think, and I don't know if you ever feel that way, Lisa, like you'll get your time later.
Sometimes, but what I will say is self-care has been non-negotiable for me the last couple years because of what I have been going through with sort of the ending of my marriage. And so I recognize some of those things. So I've curated a good circle of friends. I am doing something to give myself pleasure on a daily basis, definitely multiple times a week. And I am showing that behavior to my children. Yeah. So I feel like I've grown in that department. And I don't feel helicoptery over my kids, but I worry about parentifying them because now we're moving and it's just going to be me and them. And my oldest daughter, she's ready. She's like, I can do this, mommy. I can cook. And I'm just like, slow down, baby. I don't want you to be my partner now that me and daddy are divorcing. So for me, I'm trying to find the gray space of making sure they continue to grow and be more independent, but that I don't put too much on them. That's the part that I get really nervous about. So.
But your awareness, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, think about how unaware our parents were. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but no clue. And it's always the things that we, the ones who are wringing their hands about something that are probably the ones that are not doing the damage to the kids. And you know what I mean? The ones who are doing damage don't even know they should be wringing their hands is all I'm saying.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have gotten better at the self-care thing too. I think the last piece of this puzzle for me it's going to be many puzzle pieces forever, but the big one for me is where I still get stuck is that invisible work that needs to be made visible. Yeah. That the renegotiation needs to happen. And because as, that, and I think that this has been talked about, like I've seen this on social media, but like feminism and the women's movement has brought a lot of incredible things. but we haven't done the best job at making that invisible work visible.
Yeah.
And so what it's done is it's actually put more on us in some ways. Like, because now I'm working sometimes even more than my partner.
Yeah.
Like many of my days, sometimes I'm at the office longer. And so it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Now I'm doing both. And I think the thing that I'd love for you to speak on, Terri, if we can, because we're talking about making the work visible is really important. But also, you talk about something that I've read about a lot, and it's the value system. We are in a culture that values the person who makes the money more than the person who does this invisible work. So I have fear that just because we make the work visible does not inherently mean that it's valuable. So where do we do with that?
Well, the bottom line is you decide if it's valuable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think it's valuable. What I'm doing with my time is valuable. So I don't need anyone else telling me it's valuable. And hopefully you're partnering with someone who also understands that your time is valuable. So it's doing it within, it's almost like if there's peace in your own backyard, it can sort of go out from there, because you don't have to convince society. You need to get more equitable within your partnership. And that's what you're talking about doing.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that everyone can sort of get on board with, even if it is going to be more of this invisible work will be visible and your partner will be doing it. And, you may get pushback, and we're going to expect to get some pushback, even with partners who have the capability and want to evolve. Yeah. Right? It's like things changing is going to be threatening, because this is just part of the human condition, right? We feel a little bit threatened by change. We're like, hey, this is called homeostasis, right? We raising kids and having careers and doing all this, like we do this, and it keeps the system in what we call the family system in a homeostasis, which is balanced. When we change anything for a period of time, it's like upsetting the apple cart, and there'll be a little maybe there'll be some back and forth, or there might be some anger about it, or there might be some, I don't think you're appreciating me enough, and I don't think you're appreciating me enough.
Yeah.
But the reality is the system, because it seeks balance, you'll find your new normal together. But we have to hold the line. And I think that one thing that we haven't talked about today is our own attachment to our martyrdom to a degree, our own attachment to control. These are two things that get in the way of having equitable relationships. Because, and the control also, there's a perfectionism piece that can be in there, where we have these standards that are, the things that have helped us be successful. I imagine.
We're going to have another
I know
podcast
they're telling us your next episode starting, we should wrap. Yeah, no, okay. I'll just say that I do feel fortunate. My partner does value my time. I was even more speaking of like our culture, like in the United States.
Yeah, not being valued.
It's like the work of women isn't as valued in the same way. Correct. Or this invisible work. So it does start in the home. Yes. My partner will value my time, and this will be a good exercise for us. But I hope that we can get to a place in our culture as a greater whole where the top value isn't money. It's of these important things. But Terri, we're going to have you back on.
Yeah,
this is so much.
This has been so wonderful, and so many people will benefit from this episode and from your books. We'll put your books in the show notes. Let people know where they can find you also.
Yeah, you can pre-order the book at hfcbook.com. So pre-orders are happening right now. They're exciting. terricole.com. You can see me there. Depends on when this is going live. I'm doing a huge relationship summit in early September, which is going to be like 30 experts, which will be super fun. But you guys will see it. Just follow me on social media, which is I'm just at Terri Cole on Instagram.
And she has a wonderful podcast too. So check that out as well. And we'll put everything in the show notes.
Great.
Thank you, Lisa. Oh, thank you, Terri. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Appreciate
and we'll see everyone next time.
All right. Thanks.